What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Kumite Lifestyle Podcast. Today's guest is someone who truly lives the martial arts lifestyle. His name is Rob Pushard out of Maine. Rob started his journey at just 6 years old and never looked back. Over 5 decades of Isshinryu karate, a lifelong student, a lifelong teacher, and someone who opened his first dojo at only 15 years old. He's not just building fighters, he's building people. Rob has dedicated his life to preserving tradition while evolving with purpose. From world-level competition to running multiple successful academies to integration of Brazilian jiu-jitsu into his system long before it was even popular. This episode dives deep into discipline, leadership, humility, and what it truly means to be prepared when it matters most. If you believe martial arts is more than belts and trophies, if you believe it's about character, resilience, and community, then this episode is one you don't want to miss. Let's get into it with Sensei Rob Pushard on the Kumite Lifestyle Podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Kumite Lifestyle. And today we're joined by Rob Pushard, who currently up in Maine, correct?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So, Rob, how's it going today?
Enjoying the warm weather. It's up to 32 degrees, so that's good.
So it's warm for you guys, right?
Yeah, that's really warm. It's been around 5 to 7-ish. So
Oh man, that's crazy to think. So we just got snow recently, and I guess cold for us is like 20s or 30s. So it's just
man,
like, I guess wherever
that's
you
a heat
live in the
wave.
world, right? What's that?
Yeah, yeah. I said that's a heat wave for us.
Yeah. Like what's the warmest it gets in Maine?
Well, we've had. I mean, we get temperatures in the summer sometimes up towards 100, but it's rare. There's usually about 8 weeks of summer, about 4 weeks of actual summer,
Yeah,
and that's usually in August. That's about it.
gotcha. And then everything else is pretty consistent.
Pretty much cold from that point forward.
Yeah. So I got to ask before we dive into your martial arts career and journey, which I definitely want to hear about. For anyone that's coming to Maine, like what would be a selling point? So if you're coming to Maine, like what would be something like you should check out this place, or you should check out this place, or you should avoid this place?
Honestly, the coastline in Maine is really nice. I've been all over the United States, and the coastline in Maine is probably the best that I've seen. It's not flat, there's lots of rocks and ocean front and stuff like that, little harbors and stuff like that. So anywhere along the coastline, all the way up, and you could also stop into one of our schools, which is amazing to visit. So
Absolutely, yeah. And I was wondering if you were going to mention your dojo, like give yourself a little plug there, right? Since you know
yeah,
anyone passing through Maine. So yeah, for those watching, by the end of this, if you ever get a chance to go to Maine, check out all those places, like the
yeah,
coastline. And of course, check out, Sensei Rob's dojos, because I know you have more than one location. But yeah, so for those watching, we both do martial arts, but more specifically, we do Isshinryu karate. And I know that you also dabble, or not dabble, but you also train jujitsu as well. So you're pretty well rounded, as they say. So where our connection meets is, I think it was the 2022 Isshinryu Hall of Fame,
yeah,
and it's a big event that happens every July down in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So we go from the colder parts of the United
yeah,
States down to more of the warmer places with beautiful scenery. So
yeah.
huge shout out to the Gatlinburg area. But yeah, we got connected there. And funny thing is enough, I already like, because Isshinryu is kind of a small community as it is, especially with the world of social media. I already knew who you were before we even met, just through social media, just seeing you online. And I knew that you had a big presence as far as a big like dojo is concerned. And I've heard nothing but great things about you. But yeah, I'm happy that we got a chance to connect and had a chance to see you compete as well. And Kevin Kump, who's also a friend of yours, he was also one of my early guests. So shout out to Kevin. It was,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, like it was just a fun that weekend was pretty cool. So your roots are pretty strong in Ishinu. So yeah, let's just start from there. When did you start your martial arts journey officially? Because it might not have been Ishinu first, so I don't want to speak in absolutes.
Yeah, so originally I was about 4 years old, and my dad was taking Shotokan, my dad and my uncle.
Yeah.
And from 4 to 6, they would work out at the house one day a week before they went to the dojo. And so my dad tells me from my ages 4 to 6 that I practiced with them in the living room. I don't know what that meant. It's kind of informal. I think I just kicked and punched them. That's about it. Um, and then when I was around 6 years old, my dad introduced me to a Isshinryu instructor. Asked me if I wanted to take karate. I said yes. He had found an Isshinryu instructor that he had become friends with, and so we started training with him. So I don't really remember not doing martial arts. When people talk about it, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know what it's like not to do it. So,
Yeah.
and I'm 58 now, so I've done it for a few years. So Isshinryu straight, probably 51 years.
Wow, that's awesome. It's a lot of
Yeah,
dedication. And, one of the fascinating things that I've learned, especially by having a lot of different guests on from walks of life, more specifically martial arts, is you get people that have, you know, these lifetimers, if you will, the folks that have been training for a long time, like yourself, they start pretty early on and there's something about it that just keeps them going, whether it was competition, whether it's just that niche of, excitement for each class or teaching, because I know that you've also been a sensei
yeah,
there for a while too. So I'm curious, Rob, in your early days, if you can, kind of take us back in time, what motivated you to keep, I guess, going to class, or like what kind of sparked that interest for so long? Because it's always amazing when people can do anything for, such a long time and be very devoted to a single craft, if you will.
yeah. I think uh, most of it was my dad. One of the things he always said was, you never quit anything, and he was very much on our name. Our name was important to him. So when I started karate, I kind of knew that that was kind of the direction I was going to head until I was at least old enough to not have to listen to him. Um, but he also started at the same time with me in Isshinryu. So, I went through the different stages just like anybody else, started playing sports. Hey, I'm too busy for karate. But my dad never let me miss a class. And we always had a rule that my instructor had a rule that said if you're going to quit karate, that you had to go do class first. And then after class, you could go up to him and tell him that you want to quit.
Mm.
So on
And
the
no one wanted
few
to do that.
occasions, yeah, yeah, yeah. On a few occasions when, I felt like, man, maybe I want to just hang with my friends and do stuff like that. My dad would say that. And then, of course, I was scared to death of my instructor. So I would go train. And then afterwards, my dad would say, you want to talk to him? Nope, I don't want to say a word. And I would just leave. So then it just becomes something we did. It was just normal. When I was 15 years old, I actually opened my own dojo.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I
15.
was the head instructor, and my dad was the adult in charge.
Man,
Yeah,
yeah, dude, that's awesome. That's definitely something I did not know about you. So, yeah, talk us through that. What came about that and why eight like around
why
that time?
15?
Because yeah, 15, because I'm like I can remember being 15 and I was high school, I had
Yep.
no like no conceptualization of what I really wanted to be, but here you are running a school. So, yeah, talk us through
Yeah.
that.
So when I was about 12, I had decided that I wanted to be an instructor.
Yeah.
Period. And one of my goals was I wanted my picture hanging on the wall. That was my goal. You know, I didn't realize I could just take a picture and do that, but um, so anyway, that was my goal. And when I turned 15, my instructor said to my dad, "Hey, you guys, we traveled like 45 minutes in each direction to get to him. He's like, you guys should really open a dojo in the area that you're at, and we'll let Rob do all the teaching, and you know, my dad would do basically the business part of it." So we we did that. He built a garage, and we took the doors off. Took one door off the first day, the big garage door off, and I turned half of it into a dojo. And then 2 weeks later, we took the other door off. Um, and I didn't really. I just wanted to teach. I wanted to train. I loved to fight back then, and that was a good way to do that. And when I was really young, my dad told me I had a couple of choices. I was small and I was mouthy, so I had to either learn how to run or learn how to fight.
Yeah.
And I didn't like running, so that's kind of the direction we went. Yeah, so 15 years old, opened the dojo, and it was scary, but it was cool.
Yeah, I was about to ask because I'm thinking like as you're explaining that, like obviously you had an interest and you wanted to teach, and I love how you said that you just wanted to get your picture on the wall, which, I think for anyone that's trained, traditional karate or any type of traditional art, again, I can really only speak for karate and Isshinryu itself, but I remember when I was training with Master Reese Rigby, he would have the pictures and the masters, and I always said to myself at some point, like, yeah, like it'd be cool to be up there, but never really thought it was going to be like something that's obtainable. But here you are at 15 and you already kind of have that goal. So I'm curious, Sensei, when you were teaching at 15, how were you perceived by older students or adults, if you will?
Well, we we kind of have a long-standing joke with some of my old black belts. I have black belts that have been with me for over 30 years. And one of the things when they see me teach now, it's like, wow, okay, you're way different than you used to be. Every time we had a new student, it was sparring class. So basically, what I was taught and what I felt was every time a new student wanted to come in and train, I would have to fight everybody in the dojo and then plus the new student. And then once I beat everybody up, then they all respected me and we moved on. And I did this for probably a good 8, 9 years.
Yeah,
And then I realized with my second instructor that that wasn't really what it was all about.
yeah.
And then things started changing from there.
So you kind of so it took a single moment or someone to kind of convince you, like, hey, this isn't, the way, and it worked for 8, 9 years, right?
Yeah, yeah, it worked great. I mean, we competed, we went all over the place, and we had a bunch of good fighters. Our katas didn't look very good at all, but man, we could fight.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of something that I've learned throughout the years, and I think you can appreciate this. So you talk about, teaching when you're 15 years old and whether or not someone older took you seriously or not. I think the hardest part for, when it comes to training isn't even just the training itself, because that's hard all by itself, of course, but just walking through the doors. And I can only imagine an adult coming in and saying, hey, I'm interested in learning karate. Who's the sensei here? And he's like, oh, it's me. And they're like, how old are you? 15. But no, like it
Yeah,
speaks volumes that, because I've learned that because I'm still relatively youngish. I mean, like obviously we get older every day and like, and we seek maturity, but I remember that feeling of being, that young instructor or that young competitor having success, and people don't really take you serious until they start seeing you kind of grow. And that
yeah,
was the hardest part for me. It's like, no, it's like I'm good, I'm capable. Sometimes I felt like, man, I'm better than like most of the people in this room, but the only downside is I'm just younger than everyone. So, it's
yeah.
almost like a teeter-totter effect. But no, dude, it's cool that you surpassed that, and like you didn't let that I guess sway you from your ultimate goal of teaching. But I've learned this, Rob, that you could be a black belt in any type of martial arts, and I think the perception is people think, oh, he's a black belt, obviously he's a good teacher, or they have students, obviously they know how to teach. That can be so far from the truth, and I'm sure you've seen
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
I'm curious that when you so after 8 and 9 years, you said after teaching one way and thinking that this was the way to do it, when you kind of switched your gears and your mindset after talking to, the individual that you said, what did you change now in your teaching approach?
So my second instructor was more along the lines of he was a little more of the history buff. He was a little more of the um, why you do it, the personal development, all that stuff. My first instructor was from the military. That's where he trained. He trained
Yeah,
in Washington, then he trained in Maryland. So I kind of came through there, and then second instructor was out of New Jersey. He trained out of New Hampshire. He trained out of New York. Upper New York is where his sensei was. Um, and he was older and he was more mature. He was a history teacher, in college. So he kind of leveled me out a little bit as far as my hyperness to go fight people in the tournaments and break boards and all that stuff, and
yeah,
started really working with me on kata, which was really cool, and making me understand it as opposed to just going through the motions.
yeah,
um,
absolutely. So kind of just gave you another perspective.
yeah,
So it
yeah,
didn't steal away from what you already knew. If anything, it just heightened it and made it more
yeah,
like more efficient for your students. Yeah,
yeah.
man, that's awesome. So, and you mentioned competition and how you love to fight and compete there. So let's kind of caveat to a different subject area within your training. Let's talk about the competition. So, what is your early recollection of competing, and was that something that you wanted to do initially?
So, not initially, because my first instructor wasn't into competing at all. Matter of fact, karate was a secret for most of the time we trained. Like he didn't talk about it until it was time for me to open a dojo, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you know karate?"
Yeah,
Yeah. But it was probably the early '90s where I did most of my competition. And we would travel. We'd, the typical stay in a car and in the parking lot the night before and go in and compete, then go to the next tournament. And, I had, my first recollection was the first three tournaments I entered, I was a black belt. So I had never entered competition before. I had no idea what to do. So
yeah,
fighting wise, you know, I got smoked each time because I was absorbing blows and waiting to deliver one back that would do some damage, and I never got a chance because they'd stop the fight, and I'd be like, "What's happening?"
yeah. Happened
And
so
then when I
fast.
realized what the game was, I was like, "Okay, this is like a hyper game of tag. That's what
Yep.
this is. So I need to stop doing this." So, and that changed. I had some success in the early '90s. Won some grand championships. Never really got into the world and national championships until I think it was '92. Um, Always did well. Never took the big crown. Like Kevin, yourself, whatever. But always had fun. Enjoyed meeting people because in Maine there's me. So as far as Isshinryu goes, it was kind of a new thing to see other people doing it. Um,
Yeah,
and then 2003 is when I started training with Hanshi John Hughes. Um,
yeah, yeah,
and from there kind of met and moved up into like all of the guys that I used to read about,
yeah.
meeting them and that stuff, training with Hanchi Dissel and then eventually the last 12 years been training with Kevin. So
Oh, so Kevin is your instructor now, or just someone that you train
yeah, we've been
alongside?
training the last 12 years. Yeah, probably every 3 to 4 months I bring him up, and he's intense.
Yeah, Ted's very good Ishiner too, and just
uh
overall good guy as well.
Incredible,
Yeah.
incredible.
So, to kind of go back a little bit when you talk about competition and kind of
Yeah,
learning systems, of tag, like you said, I think that's a misconception that people think karate, if they've never done it, is they think it's the old school karate kid, you're just fighting without pads or whatnot. It's this continuous kind of loop. And, for those that do compete, of course, it's not to take away or minimize, anyone's capabilities or how tournaments run things, of course, because
yeah,
everyone does things differently. But ultimately, fighting in a sense is it's really a mindset shift. You definitely have to train for it for sure, and it's cool. So from what I'm hearing, you you would compete, and then you realize like, man, like I'm not winning, but there's something to this, and then you were able to make that adjustment on the fly, if you will, and then you kind of learned like their way
yeah.
of doing it. So, what was a memorable tournament for you, or like maybe not memorable, or maybe it is, but what was a competition that maybe you won and you said to yourself, okay, like I'm actually good at this. Like I can actually see myself competing because some people, I think they recognize it early on. And then some people I've had guests say it wasn't until like maybe 5 years in, they finally won and they said, okay, I can actually do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it was in the '90s. It was I remember specifically it was a Kempo tournament or the instructor owned a Kempo school down there. It was a big tournament. I think it was called Body Works or something like that. Um, and um, I remember entering it. I slept in the parking lot that night, and I took one student with me, and I went down and I beat everybody in the division for fighting. I beat everybody in the division for kata. I beat everybody in the division for weapons. Because back then they had, weight and all that other stuff that they distributed. And then we went on to grand. So I won everything.
Nice.
And it was neat because it was the first time I won everything. And it was the first time that I really won anything in kata.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, okay, I might be fairly decent at that. So, maybe I can do more than just fight. So that was probably it. Then after that, mostly just students,
Yeah.
just what they do. Like I get more of a charge out of seeing the students win than I ever did when I did, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Because it's like you've already been there and you've done that and you know what it takes to be at those certain levels, if you will. And then yeah, I agree. As a sensei myself, it's definitely it's definitely rewarding to see the hard work that you put into students or sometimes a specific student that's working for like, that
Yeah.
specific goal or maybe they come so close to winning first place or placing or even winning grands and then to see them finally get over that hump. Yeah, absolutely. It's 1,000%, like it's definitely satisfying, excuse me. So, yeah, man, that's awesome. So you definitely had some success there competition. I got to ask though, Sensei, do you so I know you teach everything as far as Kobudo, kata, weapons, and whatnot. But early on in your competition, did you because you enjoyed fighting, like you said, did you kind of think to yourself, oh, kata's kind of not pointless, but I've heard athletes say, yeah, I only focus on the fighting because that's the real thing. But I've heard other people say, no, kata's where it's at because I'm a firm believer that if you have good basics and a foundation and you run a decent to like a fantastic kata that can translate over into your fighting if you have the good
Yeah.
skill sets and the right type of mindset like going into it. But how many times do we people I mean how many times do we see people just fight in tournaments and they have nothing to show with their kata? So overall
Mhm.
it's like their karate is not balanced.
Yeah. I think my turning point was when I met Hanji Dissel,
Yeah.
and to see his students, Kevin, Tommy, um, Don, all those guys are just amazing martial artists and humble and super good. And by watching them do kata and then, watching Kevin fight, thinking, okay, there's a little bit to this. Like you can do kata and that can translate. And that's probably the biggest transition we made in the last decade is through Kevin was understanding that it's the basics, it's the kata, it's the repetition, um, it's the conditioning, it's all of that that makes the fighting easy.
Yeah.
It makes it very simple. And so it's really helped us, especially our schools, in the long run, by understanding that and adapting to that. When I was 40, I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, training under Master Joe Moreira. And I remember I started it because fighting was hurting in karate. And I wasn't healing as fast.
Mm.
I was kind of getting older and I was kind of like, okay, I'm not really, I had 2003, I had fractured skull in one of my tournaments, and it didn't like it, you know. It didn't phase me at the time, but afterwards it's like, okay, that could have been really bad.
Yeah.
Um, so when I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I was able to fill that niche of fighting every class, without getting hurt. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I can do this. So I did that for about 10 years. And we implemented into our system, like everybody, all the black belts have to have a blue belt level in jiu-jitsu. Just because that part of the ground fighting, it fits so well with Isshinryu.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So having a good base in jiu-jitsu and then having the karate, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And you talk about that connection, like you said, where if you only strictly do Isshinryu or any type of standing art, like you can become pretty polished and efficient at the standing, like learning how to move laterally back and forth and blocking. But yeah, jujitsu takes it to another level because you unlock another potential. That's kind of the best way I like to, describe it to anyone that's kind of asking about both because even to this day, people still confuse the two. Like, oh, like you're a black belt in that jujitsu karate stuff. I'm like, it's two different things, and sometimes I struggle kind of having to explain that. But ultimately I just say, yeah, just come into where I train and just, see for
Try it.
yourself.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how you say like, for your black belts, they have to be at least a blue belt standard. And I think that's amazing. So for those, for anyone watching out there that runs a school or they have the opportunity to cross train, especially in a standing art like Isshinryu or any type of striking art, of course, and then adding that jujitsu, even having just a wrestling base also helps too.
Yeah.
But if you look at the any UFC fighter or any MMA fighter, and Sensei Steele and I, we have this conversation a lot with our students. But when you take the best fighters in the world, especially MMA fighters, the ones that are black belts in, jiu-jitsu and even black belts in striking, the ones that are efficient in jiu-jitsu and have a really good understanding of defense and staying punch protected,
Yeah.
they're not afraid to bang because they know
Yeah.
like, hey, worst case, if the fight goes to the ground, I'm okay. But if you take a
Yeah.
boxer that's never done jiu-jitsu and take them outside their element and put them in the octagon, guarantee you they're not going to throw as strikes as high percentage if they were if the rule sets were just striking. So it is fascinating where
Yeah.
it kind of just opens up the mindset, and I just have a
Yeah.
much greater appreciation now for fighting in general because I've seen it done both ways. I've seen what it's
Yeah.
like if you just know striking, but I know what it's like to also do the ground part. And then Rob, you also mentioned something that was also, I think it's very important that you've like you were doing jujitsu and you were sparring and grappling, kind of filling that niche, if you will, but you weren't getting as hurt
Right.
as much either. And I think that's important as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When as you get older, I even see it in some of the tournaments where some old guys come out of retirement, so to speak, or whatever, and they fight
Yeah.
and they get hurt bad. Some of them hurt the little ones, the younger ones, but they get hurt or they get hurt bad. And I often think to myself, yeah, I'm kind of glad that I stopped I mean, I do the stand up at the dojo, but I'm kind of glad that I stopped doing the competition part of it. Not that I don't think I could compete because I think I would do very well.
Yeah,
Kevin keeps telling me
absolutely.
to do it.
Yeah.
I just don't have a desire for that piece of it. And it's kind of went full circle for me. So like, I've competed in kata, last year and the year before and
Yeah.
sometimes do well, sometimes I don't, but that's kind of like the thing now. And with jujitsu, it was pretty easy to. I mean, I should say easy. It's hard fighting. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
If you have an ego, you're gonna get hurt. If you don't have an ego, which I don't, it was very easy not to get hurt because if somebody got me in something, I had no problem tapping.
Yeah.
Um,
Tap early, tap often, as they say.
tap early and tap often was just what I was gonna say.
Yep.
Um, I do remember my purple belt test with Joe Moreira was one of the hardest tests I ever had in my life. We had three guys testing for purple, and there was two punchers. That's what they call them, punchers.
Yeah.
That had old leather boxing gloves on, and one was actually a boxer and a jujitsu black belt. That was fun.
Yeah.
Um, and we had to do all the base positions with each one of them, and all we could use was jujitsu, but they could punch all they wanted and as hard as they wanted because we were karate guys, and we could take a punch. And it was a 3 hour technical test, and then the next day was a 3 hour physical test, which was the fighting.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got done, my head pounded because I got punched so many times, but I tapped every position. So there was 12 fights. I tapped every position. I never stopped, and I never had to use my punching or kicking.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember when I was leaving, one of the things that stuck out the most was Master Moriera looked at me and he's like, uh, "You with karate, you with jujitsu in the street, you no problem." He's
Hmm.
Brazilian, so he's like, "You no problem. You be safe.
Yeah.
Good job." And I was just like, I remember leaving it thinking, I'm too old for this stuff. Like, I don't want to do the banging anymore. But
Yeah.
it was cool.
Yeah. It is. And I'm sure that was kind of refreshing to hear that from your instructor. And not that you didn't already know that you would be more than capable and fine, of course, just because of your skill set and your time training and just your understanding. Because I feel like a lot of times, and I'm just gonna like I'm not picking on karate because I know we're both diehard karate enthusiasts and lifelong practitioners. But it is interesting where I see a lot of karate schools nowadays. They just focus a lot on the competition, which is
Hmm.
great, but nobody comes into a martial arts gym, or at least from my own experience, and maybe you can elaborate, but from what I've seen, no one comes into a karate school or even a jiu-jitsu school saying like, "Hey, I'm signing up because I want to be a world champion." Everyone comes for self-defense or, self-confidence, whatever you want to
Personal
call it or
development,
label it.
whatever.
Yeah, and then people stay for the community.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating when I see a lot of these dojos that are, and again, I could just be projecting based on what I see or whatnot, but I feel like I'm I'm not a subject matter expert on all of the facets of karate, but when it comes to the sports side, I've been around enough to know like, yeah, that school is really focused on sport based, chasing medals, if you will. But I always wonder, it's like, can you actually fight if you actually had to? And I'm sure you've seen it. And it's kind of like, I just scratched my head. I'm thinking, yeah, you're a black belt, you get all these medals, and you're good, but there's a rule set. But what but when you're out there on the streets, right, there is no referee, right? There are no rules. So it's just fascinates me how you have some instructors that they choose not to really focus on the self-defense, and that's what ultimately is what their student is there
Yeah, I
for.
mean, basically to be quite honest, it became watered down quite a bit with sport competition.
Yeah.
And again, and I'm a very honest person. I don't pull punches, and I'm not political because luckily enough for me, I grew up in Maine and I don't have to be, as far as the martial arts world goes. But I'm always very honest and will stand behind whatever I say. And I've seen it. I've seen it for years. Like I said, we competed a lot, and it got to a point in our competition like 20 plus years ago, that I found that it wasn't fun anymore. It was watered down, and it was, people were winning that weren't even remotely good martial artists. And then some of my students were developing those bad habits of the whining and all the stuff that I would never tolerate before. And I was like, okay, we're going to stop. And so we stopped for about a decade, and didn't do any competition whatsoever. Now I kind of pick and choose. Um, but we do the IWK championships. We do the IHOF. Those are great tournaments. We like those, and we do some local ones just to kind of get warmed up. But I still, to this day, I have parents that will come to me after a tournament and be like, "What was that? Like, what?" There were black belts that were like arguing with each other, and there was kids that were non-respecting, and adults that were arguing with instructors, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, because we tell our kids, you don't run around, you go by a black belt, and if you don't stop and bow, then you're pretty much done,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
got these kids nowadays that just flying around like there's no tomorrow. They got black belts at 6 years old, just whatever.
Yeah.
It is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. I call those the Amazon black belts. You just get
Yeah,
it overnight, But yeah,
yeah,
yeah, man, like so much has changed and evolved with just the whole side of martial arts, not even the sports side or not even for whatever reason, why people sign up. But yeah, man, like I agree with you there where, I think a lot of the etiquette and a lot of the respect has kind of gone by the wayside. And it's not an
yeah,
absolute because I've seen your students and I can like I always tell a lot based on the students who their instructor is. So, for example, when I met
oh,
you,
absolutely.
very professional. Same thing with Kevin, and something that I hold near and dear too. Like when you're out there, you're not just competing; you're representing your dojo, your association, and that really bleeds into your students, or it should. And again, it's not. I mean, it's not 100% because sometimes there's always that
Right.
one. I guess that one bad apple, if you will. But I guess it's what kind of makes it makes tournaments fun because it's like it's never a dull moment. You expect to see, those that are serious, but it never fails. You always see someone just going crazy, talking back.
Oh yeah, that's always interesting.
Yeah, so I gotta ask before we jump into your academies, has there ever like what's been the craziest thing that you've ever seen at a karate tournament or just a martial arts tournament?
Oh, jeez, there's been a lot.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
I'm sure.
I two senseis in the middle of there was a head judge, and we all know them, and I'm not going to poke their names. I normally would, but I won't,
Yeah.
um, because I know both of them. They'll know who I'm talking about too.
And I think I know
Um,
who you're talking about too because we've heard the same
but they
story.
they were at the tournament, and one sensei didn't like what the head judge was calling, and they got chest to chest, all puffed up, like they're going to throw down.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Kevin and I kind of have the same philosophy. If that was my tournament, I was running it, I would literally had said, "Hey guys, right over here, go ahead, let it rip.
Yeah.
We're at a karate tournament. You want to fight? Let it go.
Yeah.
Let's just see it.
Yeah, because I
The
probably
kids
would have
need to see it."
yeah, because I
Yeah,
probably would have solved so many of their problems.
that would have, that would have. But that was probably like. I mean, we and Kevin were laughing hard about that one. Like, just sat back and watched it. It's like, okay, here we go.
It's like the real Cobra Kai right now.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, yeah.
real fights.
Yeah, I think one of them actually had the short sleeves. So
Yep. Does not surprise me. Does not surprise me at all.
I
Um,
love the guy. I like both of them, but it's just funny.
yeah, it's just crazy how like, because you were touching on ego earlier, like it's crazy how like it still exists, and
Yeah,
I mean, like we all have ego to some degree because it's what kind of fuels us as human beings, but at some point, especially when you're running a tournament like you said, or you're leading people, you really do have to be the example.
you have to. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
When you choose to live this lifestyle, you can't be two different people.
Yeah.
You can't be, this is what I am on the outside and this is what I'm at the dojo. And there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make doing that,
Yeah.
and then there's some realities that you have to show, that you have to be real about your life and what you do,
Yeah.
and I I wouldn't trade it for the world. I have no intentions of ever stopping until they put me in the ground. So, you know, I just teach because I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's something that you can do for like you said the rest of your time that we're given here on this earth.
Yeah.
Awesome, dude. So right before we kind of started and we kind of started jumping into your early career, you're mentioning about your schools and like multiple schools. So currently right now, how many schools do you have in Maine?
So we own ourselves three. And then one of my black belts owns three
Wow.
schools. And then we have another one of my black belts in Florida owns two schools. And then there's one in Connecticut that owned a school years ago. I haven't seen him in years, so I don't. He's not one of our schools. He's not a Micah school. So, um, but yeah, so that's a few. We actually we had four schools and we closed one down just after COVID
Mm.
because it was close enough to our main dojo that when COVID hit, we just moved everybody over to the main dojo so we could run classes.
Yeah, for
And then
efficiency.
when everything was lifted and all that stuff, it just didn't make sense to keep it open,
Yeah.
because everybody kind of liked, the home dojo was bigger and more equipment and more people and so they just kind of stayed. So, but yeah, we have three. We probably average between. I mean, we run multiple programs, so we even have a dance program in one of our schools. Um, it's a program that, I mean, they don't do karate, but they do, I have students that do dance and karate. So, um, but we just hire the instructors and we have the space. Each one of our dojos has two big floors, every one of
Wow.
our schools. So with that, even my black belt that has the other three schools, they have a couple of floors in their dojos, and so they can run different programs.
Yeah.
We're in Maine, and my town is 2,700 people. So it's really hard to make a living, with 2,700 people, unless you can give them a place to go with a lot of people, a
Yeah.
lot of things to do. So we have summer camp, we have after school, we have martial arts, we have Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and we have dance. So with that, we average anywheres between maybe 350 to 400 to 600 in the summertime,
Wow.
in which summertime used to be like our dead zone. But
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
we run summer camp and after school, they all do karate. So, when people like, oh, you run a daycare, whatever, it's like, that's okay, call it what you want.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm helping, you know, 100 and something kids in the summer that would never even think about taking karate. They're taking karate all summer long. And out of those, a bunch of them are going to change, or maybe it's going to direct them in a different path. So I'm doing what karate's supposed to do, you
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. And you said, man, it's awesome that you have different opportunities and then you said, I guess the population of where you're at now, you're giving the community opportunities to do different things. And the more options that people have, the more likely to do something and something that I live by, people will do what people like them are doing. So, if
Yeah.
it's like if my friend up the road's doing karate or jujitsu or dancing, it's like, why can't I do it? So no, I think that's awesome that you offer that. Um, and then something else that you said that just like it instantly, it's like it's pretty fascinating to hear is that you have students that also have their own schools, but you said schools. So obviously there's a formula of success where you're able to run multiple academies, and same thing for your students. So I'm curious, Sensei, what has been, and maybe if it's a secret, I totally understand, but anything yet that's worth sharing, but how like what do you do that's different than other martial arts schools?
Um, I don't really know as though I do anything different. I've been a lifelong learner. Even my black belts have been with me forever. Will say that's kind of what they like the most. Like even with Isshinryu,
Yeah.
for doing it 51 years, you would think, me going down and doing 27 repetitions of Sun Tzu Kata would be stupid. Why would I do that? I'm 58 years old. Do I really need to do that? I do
Yeah.
because I need to get better. I need to understand it better. And so I think for me, I've learned and lived a lot of it, seeing the fluctuation of how programs work, programs don't. But it's more of a personal thing, like a people and people enjoying being around you
Yeah.
type of thing, like a community, like you had said earlier. It really doesn't have a lot to do with whether you're a super good fighter or whatever. It's just people like good people,
Yeah.
and people you know, and you have to kind of understand, I the funny thing too is in all of the black belts that ever opened a school, none of my black belts have ever opened a school without asking me, which is really bizarre.
Why do you say
Like
that?
I I think it's just the respect.
Absolutely.
Like, 'cause I have a lot of friends that have schools and they'll be like, oh, this black belt left me and they opened up down the street and I'm thinking, what?
Yeah.
Like, and I didn't threaten anybody, but they know me pretty well. But yeah, so it was just, and I think I learned from them, they learned from me. Glenn Fitzmaurice is like my top student. He's a seventh Dan. He's been with me for 30 plus years. And he used to for the longest time say, I wait for you to try something, and if it works, then I do it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, I don't do it. And now we're kind of at the point where, we'll talk sometimes multiple times a day and we just bounce things off. How are you feeling about this? Or, you know, how do you feel about your last test you did? And what do you do to motivate your black belts? And, what are your expectations?
Yeah.
So I think that helps a lot, having that communication with your black belts. And I have a lot of black belts that teach and I pay that teach. And I'm talking probably 10 or 15 that teach in different locations. But they don't do it for a living. I got one that does it for a living and the rest do it part time. But I allow them to teach. I teach them and I allow them to teach. I don't say this is how you're going to do class.
Yeah.
I monitor it obviously, but I allow them to have their specific, like the way they teach. And I think that's been a lot of our success as well, is the fact that it's not me dictating this is how the school is run. It's me looking and say, okay, is that good karate? Are you able to connect with that student? Because there's some students I can't connect with, and so this black belt over here might do a great job connecting with that student. So allowing that to happen, I think, has been very successful for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that you said that your students that do open up schools, they ask you first. And that only makes sense. Because I can't even fathom that, not just unless you have a falling out or unless you left on bad terms and then decide to open up. But from what I'm hearing, like they see a good product in what you have to offer. But more importantly, it's the fact that you lead from the front, Sensei. And that shows. And like something that I say all the time on my podcast, something that was taught to me is people don't care what you know until they know that you care,
How
and
much
if,
you care. Yeah.
yeah, and if that statement isn't like, I don't, it's so true, and like when you have when your students have something to emulate or something to kind of copy, if you will, and then kind of make their own. And you said so your best that you have all these instructors, and whether they're assisting for you or they're teaching at their own dojos respectfully, they can teach kind of using their
Mhm.
own characteristics, if you will. But I would best believe to say, and this also resonates for myself, that when I'm out there teaching, whether it's jiu-jitsu or karate, There's a little bit of Master Rigby. There's a little bit of Sensei
Oh, I'm
Steel.
sure.
There's a little bit of Henner, a little bit of Hiron, a little bit of you, a little bit of Kevin, and it's not all the time, but I listen to what and you said like always being a white belt in a sense where you're always learning and listening. So when I teach, it's like there's different personalities coming out,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's me. And you allow your students to do that because I've also seen it where it's the opposite. Like you have to teach this way. If you don't, like you're not gonna like you're I don't know, students are gonna quit. Where it's like, no, you let someone be their own people, their own personalities, of course, guiding them, that's success, and I see that a lot with with your more successful schools like
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think one of the cool things is when we have black belt testing once a year, maybe. It's always the same. We do a very unique black belt testing. Not a lot of people do what we do. And we do a 3 hour technical test at the dojo with about 25 to 30 black belts on the testing board. Everything's
Wow.
done by scoring.
Wow. Yeah.
And if they don't reach a certain number, they just don't, they're done. They don't test. They wait
Mm,
another year.
mm.
It doesn't happen often because I generally will tell somebody a year ahead of time, like, okay, you're on my radar and start getting ready now, and they'll push forward. But it has happened a few times. And then the second part is the next week we all go up north, um, about 21 miles off the grid. I rent an entire primitive campsite with about 10 different campsites, and we do a bunch of. They do a 17 and a half mile hike to get there, and then they do overnight building shelter and staying overnight in the woods,
Yeah.
which I think is important, regardless of the weather. Um, and then the next day, there's a huge private beach up there that nobody's on. There's like, I don't know, 10 camps on the whole lake. And pretty much it's a military workout the entire day. And then at the very end of the day, everybody fights.
Yeah.
And they go to the ground or sand, they go to the water, they fight. And they fight until I see that they get to a point. I mean, they're exhausted, so I don't expect good quality fighting out of them. Um, what I look for is that they're able to flick that switch when they finally, because they'll look at you and they'll look at you and they'll look at you like, please, can we stop? I've had enough. I hurt, whatever.
It's like, help
And I
me.
just, yeah, and all I do is I just scream out loud, turn it up to the black belt, so the black belts will actually turn it up.
Yeah.
So then they get mad and they get to a point where they actually fight. They just
Yeah.
say, screw it, I'm just going to fight. And when they're done, they're done. When I see everybody does that, you're done. That's the end of it. And it's a huge emotional like dump at that point. Um, but I have had, I don't know. I don't think there's one black belt that's been through it that hasn't said that was the best experience in their life. And I tell them, I said, for me, it's simple. Now I know for a fact in the street, when you are getting pummeled or somebody is doing whatever, that you will fight, and you will fight.
Yeah.
Like that for a fact. You don't have to think, can I fight? Will I? No, you're going to fight, and I think that's the biggest thing for me is
Yeah.
just making sure that that part of it is still there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it
You know,
reminds me of I had a coach on recently. He's a longtime wrestling coach here in Delaware and was a four-time state champ. And he said something that you also said too, but when you're fighting or when you're grappling or when you're kind of doing something very physical, your brain shuts off and then your body takes over. And I
yeah,
think that's so important for people to understand because how many times have you heard someone say, "Oh, like I'll just turn it on when it counts. I'll just do better." Like, no, you won't.
no, you won't.
You won't.
No, no, and I think that goes back to like what you said about the some of the competition and some of the black belts that we see or some of the students that we see nowadays that
Yeah,
and that was kind of my driving point is to make sure that at least from my school I can look at a parent in the eye or an adult in the eye and say, well, if you make it to black belt here, I know you will at least fight till the end. I know that,
yeah,
and what happens after that's up to you. But that was one of the things that was driven home to me when I was at a very young age.
yeah,
And I think that's why I enjoyed fighting so much was because I was small and nobody expected anything. So I was like, let's do this.
Yeah. It must be kind of what a parent must feel like, Rob, because I'm not a parent myself. I don't have kids of my own, but I teach a lot of students. I teach a lot of youth kids just like yourself. And that feeling, like you said, when you promote a black belt under you, you know for certain like they're going to be okay because they've proven it and what you've teaching over the years, they're finally starting to able like, to culminate. So as a parent, it must be the same feeling when they like when a kid goes off to college or they leave the
Yeah.
nest. It's like you've done everything you could to, prepare that student, and that's definitely a good feeling, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty magical when you can look at a student that's been training for, a dozen years and you strap that belt on them and you know in your heart of hearts that, originally when they started, that person was not going to do anything. Um, and then they developed into this person that doesn't want to do anything, but they will if they have to.
Yeah,
Um, and so that's kind of cool. It is. I have two kids, grown, and they both work full time at my school.
nice,
Plus,
nice.
plus they own multiple businesses themselves. So, um, yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then so you mentioned your family and your wife also trains too. Sh- Uh,
Yeah, she actually won the IWK World Championships in Kumite in 2009 in Pittsburgh.
nice.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
that was our
Kevin's.
first world champion.
Yeah, Pittsburgh is Kevin's
Yeah,
stomping grounds. Yep. And
yeah.
wife, yes, so shout out to Rebecca out there. She also sung the national anthem, I remember, at the Hall of Fame.
She sings it there. She sings it at the IWK championships just about every time they have it.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny, she'll tell you she's not a singer. Um, however, she can sing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
She's
Um,
on number, I think 97 times that she's sung it.
at an
And so
event,
yeah,
man, that's
yeah. So
awesome.
we have our first we've hosted the world championships before in 2017, but Um, that was when Shimabuku came up. That was probably the highlight of like a tournament when you ask. And I was thinking, I was like, there was a tournament that was really important. Yeah, it was that one. Shimabuku stayed with me for 2 weeks, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, the we are hosting our first open tournament in February. I think Howard is actually coming up, and hopefully you can make it. Um,
Yeah, it's in
it
the
is
works. We're definitely talking about coming up because we definitely want to
Capital
support
City
you.
Showdown. It is gonna be amazing. The black belt grands competition is on stage. It's what we did for the Worlds. It's a 3 foot off the ground, 3 foot stage, and it's like 24 by 36.
Yeah.
And and so they get up there and they can compete in front of everybody. And we actually have I think it's a 26 foot by 16 foot TV, big
Yeah.
screen. It's the auditorium seats 7,000 people, so it's a big deal. But it'll be cool. It's that first one. We might as well go out with a bang, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be I'm sure it's gonna go great. I think that there, yeah, it's an awesome event. And if that's an event that I can get to and support, the
That'd be
event,
great.
your school and yourself. Yeah, absolutely. So Sensei, before we close out, I'd like to kind of ask you kind of like what's a typical day in the life like for you? Because I know you run dojos and every guest that I have on that runs a school, I kind of use the analogy like you like wear a lot of different hats, if you will. So typically, right? So you wake up and I know do you guys have a loaded schedule? And if you do, like how do you find balance with, the other things that you do and, with your life as well?
Well, I'm probably super spoiled in this area. Um, my son actually is the CFO of the company. So he handles all the financials and all the tech stuff and all that stuff. My
Nice.
daughter is actually the COO, so she handles all the operations. So she takes care of. He's 30 years old. She's 27. She takes care of the team. She takes care of people that call out, fill in gaps. A lot of pretty much 90% of the marketing. So she takes care of all of that stuff, running the after school and summer camp program, making sure all the directors are where they're supposed to be. And then we have an admin, one of my black belts, that actually takes care of the parents and memberships and all that stuff. So for Rebecca and I, we are fortunate enough that if it's a decision that they can't make or don't want to make, they'll involve us. But if it's day-to-day stuff, they pretty much handle it.
Mm.
So we go teach. We'll go to a different location and teach. And she likes to teach the tiny tigers and the dragons, and I like to teach, the teen adults or the karate kids. And then I'm able to teach the black belts. We have, 2 hours a month training for special training, and then we have once a week. They have their class that I teach. So that's honestly, I mean, we do a lot. We have a lot of events. We do huge events. We don't do anything small. We have an Academy Awards banquet that same weekend as our tournament, same
Yeah,
weekend that we're testing 100 plus people. Um, so we kind of pack things. We have a trunk of treats that we do where we have 3,000 people show up. Um, yeah, we do a lot.
that's
So
crazy,
event
dude.
planning, creating stuff like that. We're in that mix. But
Man,
as far
that's
as having to be somewhere, I got to teach a couple of classes tonight because my instructor has to go. One of my instructors has to go to his family um, recital type stuff they do at school. So he was looking for somebody to cover. So I just said, "Oh, I'll teach." So
nice.
I'll go down and teach.
Yeah. And it's cool, like, because you don't have to teach, you get to teach, you know?
Yeah,
So I think that's pretty special there that you have like such an awesome team in your family. That's pretty clutch. I was not expecting to hear that. I was expecting to hear like, oh, we wake up, we go to the dojo, we plan, we all do this and that. And I'm sure at some point you did that, of course, so you know what that's
yeah,
like. But to kind of be able to like sit back and know that it's in good hands, especially your family, dude, that's awesome. That's amazing. That
yeah.
actually,
They've taken
that's
a lot on
fantastic,
our plate.
actually.
So it was a lifetime of work, but and they deal with a lot too. There's a
Yeah,
lot that goes into it, but at some point in time, somebody else has to do it. Otherwise, it's going to die.
yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, I've seen too many good black belts with good schools, eventually get sick and ill and pass away. And then all of a sudden the school just dumps.
Yeah,
It's like, that's not a legacy I want to leave.
yeah. Or sometimes, I've been very exposed to this where the head instructor doesn't have any type of plan if they retire or what happens to the school, and I think kind of having that continuity plan or having just something in place, it might not even be big, but have something,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
go from there. But yeah, I agree. I agree. Man, Sensei, Rob, this has been an awesome time. It's been a fun conversation getting to kind of explore a little bit about you and
I appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. And I learned a lot, man. I think the biggest takeaway was aside from what you said about your family and your kids kind of running and help running the school, if you will, from the business side and where you can just go in and teach, when you want or like, when it's needed. I think that's pretty special. And just the fact that what you've done in that area in Maine and you kind of solidified a lot of things that I kind of thought you did, but you kind of spoke it into existence of just how you've really made a community where like you give them options, right? Because you mentioned about jujitsu, the dance, and the after school thing, or the daycare that people like to call it. But
Right. Right.
yeah, man, like yeah, man, you're crushing it, dude. I think that's awesome. Bro, I was looking at your and I think I wanted to mention it before I forgot. So Sensei Steele and I were looking at I think it was a video, I think it was a promotion thing, and man, we were blown away by the awards presentation, that room. It's because
That's our Academy Awards banquet in the same place
yeah,
we're holding. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
dude,
Yeah. We have,
that was sick because I was like, man, this looks like a legit like Emmy awards,
yeah. It's a gala. It's crazy. And actually that one that I sent him was 2 years ago. And we've upgraded huge since then as far as our lighting and our TVs and all the things that we do. This year is going to be absolutely mind blowing. If we don't have 500 people there, I would be shocked. And they're all our people, and I invited, Howard and you guys, and they're all our people,
hmm
and I think that's huge. And it's just a big celebration. It literally is the Micah Academy Awards banquet, and it's just about celebrating, performing a little bit, doing some promotions a little bit. A couple years ago, my 50th anniversary, they put together this surprise video of like all of my black belts. So like black belts I haven't seen since I was a teenager, that were saying, hey, some of them are like, hey, Sensei Pushard, don't even, realize that, we move up the titles and stuff and like, hey, Sensei, I remember this or you did this for me. And it was a super, super cool moment. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, Micah is Isshinryu in Maine. There is literally no other school in Maine teaching Isshinryu if it ain't a Micah school.
Yeah.
And that's why I said earlier, and I know we got to end this, but I said earlier that I don't do politics. That was one of my unique upbringings was when I started training with Hanchi Hughes in New Jersey. I had already had, umpteen years of training. So I was pretty solid in who I was as a person. And I just remember all the politics of different people that I met. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
Hmm.
no, this isn't, you don't do this. So I became kind of that guy that nobody really wanted to talk to because I'm very honest. You ask my opinion, or if you do something wrong or something that isn't whatever, I'm going to tell you. And
Yeah.
if people are around, then that's fine. But if not, and we do it privately, that's fine too.
Yeah.
But it was great growing up without politics.
Yeah.
Like all you had to do was practice Isshinryu. I didn't have to worry about this guy that went down the street and used to train with this guy that went down the street and New Jersey is like a infestation of that.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. It is.
I mean,
It is.
great, great guys. I like them, but man, when they start talking stories, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys envy me because I have zero of them. Nobody.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. Man, Sensei, is there anyone that you would love to shout out right now or give thanks to before we conclude this pod? I always like to give my guests that opportunity to kind of close off with some gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, obviously to my family first and foremost. It's funny. I told them I was going to do this podcast. I'm like, how do I talk about myself for a freaking hour? So I don't even have anything to say, and they're like, you got plenty to say. Just be yourself. And I was like, okay. So
Yeah,
shout out to my family for obviously making this happen, like where I'm at now in life and whatnot. Um, and honestly, I learned so much from different instructors, and I would say the last 12 years of training with, Kyoshi Kevin Kampf has been definitely uh, probably some of the more eye-opening training. So, he's a very smart individual, and a very, very good friend. And man, does he push. So I appreciate that because, there was a time that I kind of lost that push and man, he's still stepping on the gas. If I could pull up my phone right now and he's got text messages asking me if I'm still chatting or if I'm training.
I
But
love
yeah,
it.
shout out to him. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, man. Sensei, thank you so much for your time today. And for those watching, if you're ever in Maine, make sure to check out the Micah schools, of course. Connect, with Sensei. And oh, where can people find you on social media if anyone is interested in getting to know you or more information about your school?
Everywhere. If you whether it be, I mean, my kids are in charge of all that, the Instagram and all that stuff. But if you just put in Micah Maine Isshinryu Karate Academies in Maine, you can pull up just about any information you want. Facebook,
Mhm.
or personally, Rob Pushard on Facebook. Definitely reach out. Um, we've had people stop by and especially in the summertime when it's nice and people actually visit me. But we've had people stop by and train and or just stop by to say hi. But yeah, I don't have any links or whatever that I can think of. MikeIsAwesome.com. I don't know. You can type in just about anything, Mike, and if it's in Maine and it's Micah, it's me.
Yeah,
And Glenn, Glenn has a very, very successful dojos as well. So,
nice, nice. Oh, random question has nothing to do with issue, but s-
okay.
so you mentioned Maine. Is there a dairy Maine? Like
Yeah.
in
Yeah. So there's a dairy, New Hampshire too.
okay. No, because I just I just finished up watching Derry on Prime, with the It and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, there are some fictional ones, but most of them are the names we have. We have crazy names up here.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, just to
yeah,
kind of get a little connection there, to make sure like because sometimes you watch stuff, it's like okay, like obviously that's not real, but locations are always pretty cool. Derry,
yeah,
Maine. So like I had to ask because like I wanted to ask you that in the beginning, but I forgot. So I wanted to make sure that I
yeah,
asked that for those watching. Like, oh, Maine. Oh, I wonder if he knows like where Derry is or
yeah. Yeah, I think that's down on the coast.
yeah. But
He,
yeah.
yeah, they reference a lot of. We see a lot actually when in the movies when they project Maine. And we look at it and we're kind of like, is that? Oh, you know what? That's Boothbay Bay Harbor, or
Yep.
that's you know. But
That's cool. All right,
yeah.
man.
All right,
Sensei, again, thank you so much for your time. It was an honor to have you on, and definitely looking forward to connecting with you in the new year.
yeah. Hopefully, we'll see you in February 1st.
Absolutely.